If tomorrow starts without me, there's something you should know. While I hold you close, never let you go.
Hello and welcome to The Broken Pack, a podcast focused on giving sibling loss survivors a platform to share their stories and to be heard, something that many sibling loss survivors state that they never have had. Sibling loss is misunderstood. The Broken Pack exists to change that and to support survivors. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Dean. My guest today is Dr. Heidi Horsley, a licensed psychologist, adjunct professor at Columbia University, and with her mother is the co-founder of the Open to Hope Foundation. About 40 years ago, Heidi lost her older brother Scott in a car accident, and that loss became the driving force behind her life's work helping grieving siblings find hope. Take a listen.
You never know, you just never know.
Welcome to the show. I've known you for a while. I'm so excited for this interview, but I wanted to know how you wanted to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Okay, I'm Heidi Horsley, Dr. Heidi Horsley, or Dr. Heidi or Heidi. I'm the executive director for the Open to Hope Foundation. I am a bereaved sibling. My brother Scott died in a car accident when he was 17. I am an adjunct professor at Columbia University, and I did my doctoral dissertation on the sudden death of a sibling, no surprise. And I serve on the advisory board for TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. And I serve on the advisory board for the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation and have a private practice in New York City specializing in grief and loss.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we met through the Association of Death Education and Counseling.
Yes. We Open to Hope partners with ADAC, a wonderful organization, and so glad that we met there.
Someday I'll convince you that we should write a book together.
On our spare time.
Yeah, right. So, would you like to say a little bit more about Open to Hope or what you're doing?
Sure. So, Open to Hope is an online platform for people looking for hope after loss. I have been doing it with my mom for over 20 years. And so what we do is we interview people like you, Angela, for our podcast. And we also have a cable show. And like I said, we've been doing this for over 20 years. And basically what we want to know is, how do people find hope after loss? Everything on our site is free. Most of our guests almost all of them have had losses. They've had deaths and they've gone on to find hope again. And so they are the experts in their experience. And we also have over 400 people that write for us. And it's all, like I said, on finding hope after loss.
I love that so much. Every time I see your booth, I'm like so excited to come over. And what I love is that you and your mom and your sister as well are all in this together.
It is a family affair. My other sister has now joined also. So I've got two sisters that are involved and my mother. My father was involved, but he died in 2020. And yes, we do it in memory of my brother and cousin who died together. It's been a wonderful labor of love, and we've met so many inspiring people along the way.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. Before we get into losing Scott, how would you like to introduce him to us?
Ooh, I love that question. I've never been asked it either. Scott was a boy in a sea of girls. He was our only brother. He was the middle. I have two sisters, so there was three girls and him. He was adored by us because he was the only boy. He was very athletic. He was very popular and friendly, and people loved him. He varsityed in 3 sports. He got a lot of awards. He was the quarterback of his football team, catcher of his baseball team. He was in high school when he died. He was really adored and loved by his sisters. And he was our family mediator and also our family clown and made us all laugh. So losing him was very significant. And he was my go-to person. He was one of my best friends. I would go to him in many, many situations and get his advice and support, etc. So yeah, it was a wonderful relationship.
What was the age difference?
I was 20 when he died. He was 3 years younger than me. My mother had 4 kids in 6 years.
Oh, wow.
God bless her. And I was the oldest. So we were all very close in age. So he was 3 years younger than me. He was my little brother.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you haven't been asked that question before.
I haven't. People ask the way that he died, but they don't ask me about the way that he lived. which is really what I love to talk about because he had such a great personality and was such a wonderful person. And that is not a question that many people ask.
Especially of a sibling, I think.
Yeah.
Which I'm curious about your experience because every time I've seen you at ADAC, you're with your mom. And so a lot of our listeners and a lot of our guests have talked about this differentiation that happens between parent loss and sibling loss. Because I imagine your experience is different.
My experience was very different. And what happened is with Open to Hope is my mom started doing a podcast for Compassionate Friends. It was radio then because this is over 20 years ago. She started doing a radio show and I was listening and she said, Heidi, what do you think of my radio show? And I said, I think it's wonderful, but you're not talking about the siblings. Our voice is not heard. And once again, we're being unacknowledged and disenfranchised. And she said, okay, come on and be my co-host then. So that's how we got started. And oftentimes, Angela, we don't agree because we both have such different experiences and we've had different losses. And sometimes I might think she's minimizing my loss and I'll tell her, we are very candid on our show about these kind of things. So yes, I'm coming from the sibling. She's coming from the parent loss.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
What would you want to share about losing Scott?
The short end of it is he and my cousin Matthew were both 17 and my cousin was driving. They were in Washington, D.C. My brother was a passenger. It was a rainy night and they were on a bridge and the car hydroplaned and hit the side of a bridge and the car caught on fire and they died pretty quickly because the car ignited. So I lost my brother and my cousin together at the same time.
And I think that the cousin relationship is close to the sibling relationship, right? It is also one of those relationships that is lifelong differently.
It definitely is. And what was interesting is because I lost Scott and Matthew together, I didn't grieve Matthew's death for a long time. I felt so overwhelmed by my brother dying that I just put Matthew on a shelf and was in my own head like, okay, he's gone. He's on a vacation somewhere. He's not here. I can't even wrap my arms around the significance of two people at the same time. So it was years later that I really visited that loss.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Where were you when you found out?
I was at the University of Utah. I grew up in New York, but I was at school in the West and got a call in the middle of the night. It's kind of weird how a lot of times things happen in the middle of the night. I don't know what that's all about. And my mom told me, and she was in DC because she was visiting my aunt. That's where she was there. And she was hysterical. And I remember something that I thought was really strange at the time. She kept apologizing and saying, I'm so sorry I didn't save him. And I'm like, Mom, you weren't even in the car. You weren't even there. I don't understand why you're saying this. And she said, because a mother's job is to protect her child.
Oh.
And I found that really interesting because she wasn't there. But I've since learned from talking to other parents that that is kind of a common theme when you have a child die.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's any literature on that. But also, my brother died suddenly from a medical event. I don't think my parents have ever apologized. I wonder if it is more of an apology around accidents.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to see if your parents, tricky to ask them, but if they had any thoughts of maybe we should have done more, maybe we should have saved them, even though they couldn't, kind of like magical thinking.
My mom has said things like that around getting him to go to the doctor. So yeah, I guess that is a thing that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry for your loss. And I know that's how we came together.
You as well. Yeah. You earned your doctorate in psychology because of your brother, right?
Yes, absolutely. Shortly after he died, I moved back to New York to be closer to my parents. And I was living in the city. And I got an associate's degree in fashion merchandising. And I thought, I'm going to go down this road. I was into fashion. And when he died, that really put my whole life into question. I was like, why am I here? What is my purpose? Why am I still alive? Why was it my brother? What's the meaning of life? And I ended up dropping out of college, moving to Southern California from New York, living there for 3 years and taking a really big existential journey. I ended up working at Nordstrom to make money, but I was there to figure out why I was still here and what my purpose was. It was a long journey. It was a long journey to figure it out. It took 3 years. And after that, I was still trying to figure it out. During that time, I went on a program called Outward Bound. I don't know if you've ever heard about it.
I've heard of it. I don't know much about it.
It's kind of a wilderness survival program.
Oh.
So my brother was supposed to go, but he had died. He had been the year before and loved it. So I took his place. And he was very athletic and I'm not. And he was a wilderness person and I'm not. It was super, super hard. You're there for 23 days in the Colorado mountains. Everything on your back is what you have. You're staying out in the wilderness. During that time, they have a 3-day solo, which was amazing because I just kept thinking about why am I here? What is my meaning? And during that time, my dad had given me a book called Man's Search for Meaning, which I'm sure you've heard about. And it's basically, the story of how Viktor Frankl not only survives the Holocaust, but ends up writing a book about it and thriving, despite the fact that most of his family and friends die. And he says while he's in the camps, I need to find a will to live. If I don't find purpose, I'm not going to make it. And he quotes Nietzsche as saying, he who has a why to live can bear with almost any how. In other words, if we know why we're here, and you know this, Angela, because you have a major purpose now. If we know why we're here, we're going to be able to get through the everyday. And some of us out there don't yet know why. And it took me a while to figure it out. But I realized 2 things from that book. One is I needed to find my why. And 2, if Viktor Frankl could lose his entire community, his parents, his pregnant wife, his friends, all these people, and not only survive, but go on to thrive, I could somehow do it too. And sometimes we have to hold on to people further down the road until we find our why and our hope. And that's why we end our show on Open to Hope saying, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own.
Love that.
So after the 3 years, I found my why. My why was to help other people and give them what I didn't have after my brother died, and devote my life to helping people find hope after loss. And that's what I've done. And, from there, I just went back to school. I left California, went back to school and got my graduate degrees. And here I am.
As I was reviewing for this episode, and I saw all of your degrees after you have the doctorate, and then you went on to get multiple other master's degrees.
I did. So. And everything was I was so focused. Before Scott died, I was a solid D student, literally. After he died, I was like, wait a minute, I'm not just going to school to get a piece of paper. I'm going to school to give back and help others get through the worst losses of their lives. So it took on a different meaning and a purpose. Yes, I went on to get 2 masters and a doctorate, and everything I did was about learning. I was an expert on my lived experience, but I wanted to learn as much as I could professionally about how to help people who had traumatic losses. So everything was focused. I did as much as I could in that. I took as many classes as I could. There's not a lot of classes to take.
Absolutely.
All my internships were focused on give me all the grief and loss cases. And people in my internships would say, really? Yeah, you want them? I'm saying, yeah, I want them. I want to learn as much as I can about how to help people.
Can you say more about meaning and purpose? I know I've talked about it on here and being mentored at PI with Dr. Bob Niemeyer. So
love him.
I know you now as well.
Not a better person to do that. Talk about gold standard.
But I think sometimes people, maybe not in the professional world that we're in, but maybe our listeners sometimes hear, I've lost somebody. I've lost my sibling. I've lost whomever. And there's a pressure if you hear meaning and purpose. Like, I can't make meaning of that. Right? There's a reaction to hearing that can feel really negative. And you and I both have obviously made meaning and purpose out of our losses in some way. So I'm wondering what you would tell someone that's having that reaction.
I would say one is sometimes people feel overwhelmed because they're like, I'm trying to survive here. I get that because I've been in that space. And you can do things that are small. I think one of the main reasons I'm on the earth is to keep my brother's memory alive. And I say that to siblings all the time. We know things about our siblings no one knows. We had a shared history.
Yeah.
We grew up together. So pass those stories down to the next generation, to friends that didn't know them. That's part of why we're here, I think. And my kids know my brother, even though they've never met him. because I'm constantly sharing stories about our sibling relationship with them and about him. And I think that, yes, when you say find meaning, it can feel like you're minimizing or unacknowledging the significance of the death. Having somebody die and a brother die is horrific. It is horrible. It brings you to your knees. It turned my world upside down. It put everything I ever knew into question. I didn't want to find meaning. And I didn't want to continue in bond with him. I wanted him here in the room, now alive. So it took me a long time to say, Heidi, plan A is not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And people would say to me, Heidi, he wants you to be happy and he wouldn't want this. And I got that. My mind got that. But your heart sometimes takes a while to catch up with your brain and your mind. It took me a while to really live my best life and to find hope again. So I understand initially those kind of words, meaning, purpose, continuing bonds, are hard to wrap your arms around. And I finally had to say, okay, I have to go to plan B, C, D, Z. I can't have him here, but I can honor his memory by living my best life. And I can still have a connection with him and still think about, Scott, what would you say if you were here? And how, sometimes I call on him and just in my head and say, give me strength, or tell me, what would you be doing if you were here? What advice would you give me? We have conversations and I imagine what he would say to me. But initially, it's hard to do that because initially you're just in so much pain.
Yeah,
it takes a while to get to that space, I think.
It sounds like even that trip, you said you weren't an outdoors person and you weren't athletic, was some of learning more about him in his element.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but it was. It was a very painful time for me because it was very, very difficult. When my brother died, I wanted my life to reflect how I was feeling on the inside. When he died, it was April and it was a beautiful day. And it was sunny and it was gorgeous and I was outside. I didn't want that. I wanted it to be raining and storming and, horrendous. So going on Outward Bound and having the elements and having bad weather and good weather and having a harsh environment fit where I was internally. It was really, really physically hard. And it was also it was even more emotionally hard because I was grieving his death. And I could grieve openly and people thought, oh, she's sad because this is a hard mountain to climb. It was a hard mountain to climb, but not in the physical sense. It was the emotional mountain I was climbing to learn how to live my life without one of the most important people in it.
I love that insight and that metaphor, right? The mountain to climb. There was a business coaching trip when I decided I was going to develop the Bergen Pack into what it is now, but also what it will be. And I was climbing a mountain and I just wasn't sobbing. And people were like, oh, it's really hard. I had the same. Like it was because I was really out of shape, but also I got to the top and I was like, I couldn't have done this without my brother.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? I had the same experience. There were times on Outward Bound where I was like, I can't do this. And I would just channel his memory and his strength and it would push me through.
Yeah. How do you feel his presence now? It's been 20 years?
It's been 40 years.
40 years. I'm sorry.
And people freak out about that.
Making you much younger.
I love that. I love that, Angela. People freak out about that. So like, oh my God. But I'm like, but I'm here as an anchor saying I'm further down the road. I'm here for people that are not as far down the road to hold on to because we need people that are further down the road. And that being said, I think one of the things I've learned the most and I've been most surprised about is how his death still impacts me today. I'm shocked. Not always in negative ways because I've had a lot of post-traumatic growth, but sometimes I'll get overwhelmed by something and I'll be surprised. I'll be like, wow, I can still be brought to my knees about this. The difference is now when I'm brought to my knees, I recover very quickly. Back in the day when I would be brought to my knees, it would wreck me for days.
What has surprised you recently about how the loss has impacted you?
Okay, great example. The other day I went and saw Wicked. The second Wicked, okay, with my daughter. And that song at the end, because I knew you, I've been changed for the better. And I've been changed for good. I was in my head with my brother. because he has changed me for the better and for the good. And I was right there with him and I was reviewing all the memories with him. And I was like, wow, this is really hitting me. And I was crying, etc., and trying not to really lose it in the movie theater. But I was surprised that I could go to that level of grief in my heart still.
Yeah. I love how you said having people down the road has been helpful. Right before we started recording, I shared with you that I haven't released a lot of episodes in the last year because the 5-year anniversary was last year and it was hard. And so what I did do was look to all of you that are down the road ahead, like how
that's really hard,
inspiring
Angela.
that can be.
5 years is not that long.
I know.
When you think you're going to have your brother in your life until you're 85 years old or longer.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, it's not that long. I mean, my grandparents outlived my brother, 2 of them. So, you know, we think in life that we're going to have all these milestones. You thought, you know, you're going to grow old with your brother. You might have kids with them. You might go to their weddings and their graduations and all these monumental events that are going to happen. And every time there is a family reunion, a family birthday, a family get together, he is not there.
Right.
And I'm always aware of that. I never forget about that. It always tugs at my heart because I'm like, he won't be here physically. I want to think that he's here in other ways, but he's not here physically, which is tough. So my heart goes out to you.
Oh, thank you.
That's it. Yeah.
You said at the beginning that he had all of these roles, right? He kept the family together, and the mediator, the clown.
Yes, he was funny. He was very funny. And, you know, my sister and I fought a lot. One of my sisters and I are very close now. We all got very close when he died. But she is 16 months younger than me, and we were very close in age, and we fought growing up a lot. And he mediated all that. So, you know, he'd be like, you guys stop, you know, calm down. And so, you know, to have the mediator gone, it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do now? We got to figure this relationship out. I mean, are we going to keep doing this? I mean, siblings are here, but we can't count on them always to be here.
Which is something that, unfortunately, most of our listeners will understand.
Right.
How did you navigate those family dynamics? What did that look like?
We had to really figure out who we were without him in the room. It's kind of like without him in our family. My dad was not an athletic big guy, and my brother was. So my brother, he would do all the physical stuff in the house. He put up the Christmas tree. He was very handy with everything. And so we had to figure out who was going to fill all those roles. I kept my maiden name because who keeps Heidi Horsley? Especially when they could have Heidi Redding. I mean, you know, I was teased my whole life about my last name and my first name, and people used to tease me. And then when my brother died, I'm like, well, I'm the oldest. I'm going to keep this name. So we all tried to fill roles that he played. You know, I tried to fill the last name role and the academic role, and my sister tried to fill the athletic role. We all came in. My other sister named her oldest son after my brother. We all tried to fill that void, and we filled a lot of it, and there was a lot of it that none of us could ever fill. We had to renegotiate, who are we without him? It's like having a table with 6 legs and you saw one off. The table falls over. Not steady anymore. So it's a really big transition to have somebody die in the family and try to figure out, who is this family now? And it's an identity loss. Who was I? Who am I without a brother? Who was I? You know, I had to really wrap my arms around my own identity and create a new one. Because we create new normals. We can't go back to the normal. The old normal's gone. We have to figure out how to step into a new normal, as you know.
Yeah. There's this idea, your sibling knew you so well. You have many siblings. They all know you differently.
Absolutely.
The day he died changed you in ways that he could never understand. So if he was here now, what would he still recognize about you, or what wouldn't he? Aside from, 40 years.
I love this. There's a lot of things. And even initially, I changed a lot when he died. I love people. I like being fun still. And I like, kind of being an optimistic person, etc. I think he would be shocked how academic I am and how I really threw myself into school, because that was not something I ever did. My nickname in high school was Airhead02. They used to call me that. So I
That's
think
terrible.
what happened, I know, right? I think what happened when he died is I was like, life is much shorter than I thought. I need to take my life seriously, because I'm not. I did not take my life seriously. They used to say, find Heidi and you'll find a party. I mean, I was so carefree, without a care. And I realized, wait a minute, Heidi, life is short. What kind of mark do you want to leave on the world? What do you want to leave? You need to get more serious about why you're here. And so that happened pretty quickly after he died, which is why I left and went to California to figure out my why. And people wanted the old Heidi back. I was in a sorority. I got the honor pledge, which is like the one with the most school spirit. I was that girl, and I wasn't anymore. None of my friends had ever had a sibling die. I didn't know anybody my age that had a brother or sister die. And when I went back to school, people were like, what happened to you? When are you going to come back and act normal? Like the way you used to act. And I'm like, that person isn't here anymore. I mean, I'm trying to figure out who I am now, you know? And that's why I had to leave school altogether, because there was a lot of pressure on me at that point to go back to the way I used to be. And I really needed to figure out, who am I now? Who am I now without Stab on the earth?
It's a painful process to realize.
It is. And you don't go and have this existential journey and all of a sudden go, okay, I've got it all figured out. Grief is in waves. You'll be doing well, maybe for a certain period of time. It could be an hour, it could be a day, and something will happen and it'll knock you to the ground. And you're like, wait a minute, I didn't realize, and it'll bring you to your knees and you'll say, wait a minute, I thought I was going forward. You go forward and you go back and you go forward and you go back. It's complicated and it's confusing. And sometimes initially I was like, I'm going crazy. I don't know who I am. I don't recognize myself. It really is a journey.
Certainly is. I'm simultaneously saddened for you and also relieved to hear you say that this many years later, you're still having those waves that knock you down.
Absolutely.
While also you said they don't last as long.
Things will happen. When my son was born, and he's 27 now, I looked at him and I was like, my gosh, my brother's DNA is in this. It was just very profound. I was looking at my son crying. It was bittersweet. I was crying because my brother would never meet him. He would never know him. And I was crying tears of joy because part of my brother, I felt like there was DNA in there that would go on. So there was new life in the family after having him die. So that was amazing. So it was a bittersweet moment. And, you know, my brother has had such an impact on so many of the decisions I've made in my life. And I always say to siblings, look back at a lot of decisions you've made, because a lot of them, even that are not in your awareness, are because you had a sibling and are impacted by the fact that you had a sibling. I mean, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't even be in this career. I had a child, I had a son that was wonderful. We were living in New York City at the time and, you know, in an apartment. So you're not living in a big space. And I said to my husband, we have to give, you know, Aristotle a sibling. And my husband said, well, why? Because I was having fertility issues. And so he was like, this is great. One kid is wonderful. I'd had 2 miscarriages. Let's stop. And I said, Marcus, my life has been really impacted by the death of my brother. Come hell or high water, my son is getting a sibling. Now, if my brother had never died, I would have probably had 1 child. So in 2006, my sister and I flew to China and we adopted daughters so that our sons could have sisters. And that was influenced by the fact that we had a brother on the earth. And now my daughter's just had her gotcha day, January 8th, 20 years. I adopted her 20 years ago at the age of 1. And watching my kids grow up was amazing because it was bittersweet. Again, I would see them connecting and hugging each other and playing and doing all the sibling stuff you do, the good, the bad, the everything. And it would bring back memories of my relationship with my brother.
Yeah.
So there's all these milestones that just bring it right back as if it happened, you know, as if, wow, you're right there in it.
My aunt said something. I was younger. My brother obviously died not as long ago, and I only have one child. But my aunt said something. There were 4 of them, and my dad's brother, her brother, was murdered in Italy before they came here. And so my dad, a sibling loss survivor, which I never really thought much about, or until my own brother died, selfishly, I guess. But my aunt always said, because my dad and mom had us too, and then the 2 sisters had 3 kids each. My aunt always said she always wanted to make sure that she had more than 2 children in case they lost one of a sibling. So it's interesting, that perspective that you also had similarly.
Yeah, I wanted my son to experience the sibling bond, but I've heard that, Angela. And also, I've heard siblings say, I wanted 3 because one might die. And I also had a friend that's had a sibling that was a sick baby, a sibling that died when he was a baby, and she only wanted 1 because she was worried that she had a daughter. She was worried that if she had a son, he might die. It was interesting. It's just interesting the way a sibling death impacts our decision making and what we're thinking in our heads, right? And it also impacts the way we parent.
Yes.
They talk a lot about, when a parent has a child die, it impacts the way they parent the other kids. But very little is spoken about the fact that when you have a sibling die, you parent your own kids differently.
Right.
And it might not even be in your awareness because the world looks different. Things have happened to you that maybe other people haven't had that experience. So I parent very differently than I probably would have if Scott had lived.
Your cousin that also died, I'm sorry, what was his name?
Matthew.
Did Matthew have siblings?
Yes. And it was interesting watching both of our families. They had 5 children. My aunt and my mom had planned to have kids together. So, the oldest daughter and me were the same age. The second one was the same age as my sister. Matthew and Scott, same age. She just had 5. So she had another one. And then Heather, my little sister, and she had a son. They were the same age, and she had a younger one. And it was interesting watching 2 families. And you would think that we would come together a lot and talk about it, but we didn't do it that much. We did come together, but it was really hard to talk about it. There's something about being with people that have had a shared experience that initially it was hard to speak about it because we both really felt the other's pain to a certain extent. We kind of knew what the other person had dealt with. So we didn't talk as much as you would think about it.
Right. It was the same tragedy, right? The same tragic accident.
Yes. Matthew was
I don't
driving
usually
the car.
talk about myself this much on the podcast.
I love it. You are.
I lost 2 cousins as well.
Wow.
And one was, I think she was 35 from it was a terminal illness, a genetic disease that runs in the family. And the other one died by suicide. And they were siblings.
Wow.
And I don't have a close relationship with their surviving sibling, except for when my brother died. He was able to talk to me a little bit about that. But similarly, it's not something in our family that people came around and supported one another.
Yeah. That was similar.
How are you doing today with your loss? I know that can be a different answer tomorrow, but how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. And I have a lot of joy in my life and a lot of hope. And I think the things that have helped me the most, and research does show this too, are adaptive coping skills, which I've learned, and peer support. What's really helped me in my journey is finding other siblings like yourself who have had this loss. Because it really normalized a lot of what I was going through, and they validated and did not minimize what I was going through.
Right.
So I kind of found my people. And in fact, I have 4 very dear friends. We call ourselves the Fab Five because we all lost fabulous brothers. And we have known each other for over 20 years. And every year we take a trip together in honor of our brothers.
I love that.
We met through the Compassionate Friends, which is an organization for people that have had children and siblings and grandchildren die. And yeah, it's a great way to pay tribute to our brothers. And we get together and we have a lot of fun. So it's wonderful. I've met amazing people in this field that have had losses in my journey.
I met Christina Zampantella, and it was similar. Like, we felt like we had known each other forever. Her article was also one of the first ones that I had read when Tony died.
It is interesting when you meet a bereaved sibling because there's a bond that's hard to explain, really, hard to give words to.
Because you don't have to teach people that my loss is valid. We just understand.
Exactly.
That the parent loss isn't worse. It's just different, right?
Absolutely. A lot of siblings that have come to me and said, Heidi, I put this on the shelf for 10 years. Or I haven't even thought about this. I've denied it. I've cut it off, but now it's wreaking havoc on my life. I need to talk about my sibling death.
Mm-hmm.
And that can also be normal because when our sibling dies, sometimes I was focused on taking care of my parents because they were a mess. I was a mess too, but I'm like, I got to put my own stuff on hold and be there for them. And society was also telling me, be strong for your parents. The worst death that can ever happen is the death of a child, which we know is not true. All deaths are horrible. When I would tell people I had a brother die, they'd say, how's your mother? The focus was always on my parents.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I didn't even realize that, hey, wait a minute. I have the right to grieve also. This is horrific. This is horrible. This is terrible. And I knew it was, but I wasn't really talking to other people about it for a while. I was kind of just keeping it to myself.
Yeah, did my professional role. When I do an intake and I ask about losses, and somebody will flippantly mention that they lost a sibling, they always welcome the ability to talk about their sibling. And it's been interesting also because we do a lot of assessment for other things. And the amount of times the sibling loss has come up recently in which that was a trauma that wasn't addressed in some way that is impacting them now astounds me. And so I've been educating my team on sibling loss for that reason.
I love this. You know, in 2001, after 9/11, I was called back to New York. I was living in San Francisco at the time, finishing my dissertation. I was called back to New York to work with the fire department for 10 years on a longitudinal study looking at traumatic loss over time in firefighter families that had had a firefighter die in the trade center. All the funding was going to the death of a child, the death of a spouse, and the death of a parent. For 5 years, I was not allowed to work with the siblings because nobody did, not in the fire department. And it was really infuriating for me. I'm like, the siblings need help. And they're like, yeah, but all these other losses are more significant. And I said, no, they're not. So I thought on a scale as big as 9/11, people would have gotten it, but they actually didn't. It actually reflected every other kind of loss, where it was a disenfranchised loss that people didn't see as significant as the death of a child, the death of a spouse, and the death of a parent. And finally, when I did end up working with the siblings at year 5, I worked with them in a group setting, and they were angry. And they had every right to be. So, I spent many, many months validating that before we could move on and say, okay, now what are we going to do about this anger so that it doesn't wreak havoc on your life and your body? But initially, it was just validating and acknowledging that they had been overlooked and marginalized and minimized.
Yeah. Thank you so much for advocating for them.
Yeah. You're welcome.
I wonder if you hadn't been involved, if that would have even happened.
It's a good question. Yeah, and the funding wasn't there for the siblings. Interesting.
Is it now? Do you know? I mean, I don't know how much funding is still.
Yeah, I don't know how much funding is still available. I mean, I myself see my FDNY families pro bono, and I will for the rest of my life because I'm committed to being there for them. It's part of my meaning.
Right,
it's like we find meaning in little ways, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So while we're talking about this difference in losses, the parent loss, the child loss, you did say that you disagree with your mom and you're vocal about that. Do you want to say more?
I'm trying to think of specific things that she says. Well, occasionally she will talk about the fact that the worst loss is a child loss. And I say, Mom, the worst loss for me was my brother's death. That's the loss that I know. That's a loss that brought me to my knees. So the other thing is she sometimes assumes that because my brother and I weren't living under the same roof at the time, that it must have not been that big a deal for him to die in my life. It must have not been as significant for me. And that's not true. because we talked all the time. We were on the phone. We were still very connected, even though we weren't living under the same roof. And I felt like I lost not only my past, but my future with him. The opportunity to grow old, the opportunity to go through life with him. We were parallel travelers. Most siblings will spend 80 to 100% of their lifetime with their sibling. In comparison, most of us will spend only 40 to 60% of our lifetimes with our parents on the earth, because often your parents will die before you.
Yes.
So I think it was hard for her to really understand the significance of my loss. It still is hard for her. She's understanding it more because we've been working together for a long time, but it's been a big learning curve for her.
When I first met her at the conference, I think it was in Columbus, she immediately was like, "Oh, you have to talk to Heidi," because
I love that.
she gets it. Yeah, so she does see it. Yeah.
She does. She does see it. And she's really good about me pushing back. She'll say, "Tell me more." If we've got a sibling on our show or whatever, and she says, "Well, tell me about how your parents are doing." I'll go, "Mom, we're here to focus on the sibling. Stop." Because what happens is that shuts us down because our parents aren't doing well, oftentimes initially. So then we start talking about our parents and how our parents are doing. And then it just becomes another conversation about how our parents are.
One of the first interviews, I had a guest host interview me. In hindsight, he's a friend, but doesn't have a sibling. I don't know why I chose him, other than he had a podcast, to interview me. And he was astounded that people will ask about how your parents doing. And I said to him, I would love that answer to be better, but I'm also here. It's really hard to say something, as you said, when you're asked that question. I'm interviewing the author of a book called Were You Close?
I like
And
that.
yeah, you should read the book.
Yeah, I like that title.
And the very first part of the book, she talks about this question, like your mom assumed you weren't living under the same roof, that you weren't close, or
right.
And that's just such a bizarre question. I know that I'm guilty of asking that in my intakes at time to time when people are talking about who they lost or their parents or how close was your relationship. We can't quantify that? What does that even mean? But it's not always for other people to know or judge. And so I think to your point of you weren't living in the same house, but you have all of these memories. You had this whole expectation in this lifetime of what your life was supposed to be like with all of your siblings here, not
Exactly.
your
And
sisters.
the other thing is, for those that had ambivalent relationships, those are sometimes the hardest to work through after someone dies.
Right.
Those are some of the most emotional because there's no time on earth to have a different relationship.
Right.
Our relationships transform and change as we age. I mean, my sister, if she had died in high school, that would have been a very difficult relationship for me to unpack because we didn't get along. We didn't get along until I was out of the house, till I was an adult. And thankfully, she didn't die because I've had a lifetime to work through our relationship and we're best friends now. But that wasn't always the case. So I have a lot of siblings that'll come to me and say, I didn't have a good relationship and I don't know how to deal with this now. I have regrets or guilt.
Right. But there are ways to work through that in therapy. I want to make sure our listeners know that. But it's not in the same way that you can if the person is physically here. And yeah, so these questions that people ask any griever, and I think sometimes siblings, it just feels safer to ask the obnoxious question. Like,
Exactly.
we're not going to ask the grieving parent, like, were you close to your child? We're just not going to do that.
Well, I read a poem once, which was really great. It said, were you close? And the person said, yes, but we didn't know it then. So in other words, sometimes when someone dies, you realize all the roles they played in your life. It might even be that they were devil's advocate or that you tried different hats on with them or that you debated with them or that you fought with them, but you realize all the roles once they're not here anymore. You're like, wow, they had a much more significant impact than I even realized.
Yes. Did you learn that about your brother?
Absolutely. Yes. I realized all the roles he played when he was no longer here. Yeah. One of the things about sibling loss, which is complicated, is sibling relationships are complicated.
Yes.
Because these are people in our family and they're safe people, we take liberty with them we might not take with our friends. We might argue with them more. We might push back more. We might try different roles on. They're our best friends. They're our arch enemies. They're our playmates. There are people that we fight with all on the same day.
Yes.
They play many, many roles. It's extremely complicated. A lot of siblings I know, including myself, the last thing I said to my brother was not, I love you. It was just, hey, see you later. Oftentimes you hear parents say, the last thing I said to them was, I love you. That wasn't usually how we ended our relationship, just when we see each other. We just say, hey, see you later. It was not like that. So they're complicated relationships. And that's why when a sibling dies before their time, it's complicated. Because you're like, wait a minute. Like you said, I don't have time to work through stuff. I don't have time to tell them things I might want to have told them. I love you so much, etc. And you're not expecting it. You're blindsided. You just do not expect a sibling to die. You expect to grow old with them.
Yeah, thank you for that. Are there other things that you want to say about loss or grief or sibling loss in general before we wrap up?
I think sometimes people are really afraid that they're going to forget. They're going to forget the person as time goes on. They're going to forget what they look like, how they acted. I find that the more the years go by, I have more memories because we remember in picture form. So, Angela, when you go into pictures of your brother, of memories of film of your brother, you and your brother growing up, I'm guessing that you become very upset and sad, and the grief can be overwhelming. Where I am in this journey, which is many, many years further than you, the grief doesn't get in the way of those memories. I could go deep in my head into some really incredible memories, and the grief doesn't block that. I'm in them without getting overwhelmed and sad and,
That's inspiring. Thank you. I was thinking about that recently. I was like, I feel like I don't have any memories half the time.
Yeah, exactly. Which is so normal at 5 years. You're like, why am I not remembering? Why can't I access those spaces? It's almost like your body's protecting you from becoming really overwhelmed. I don't need that protection anymore. I can go into looking at him, seeing him on his bunk bed, thinking about him teaching me how to drive a stick shift. I can go into those spaces. I'm there. I'm there with him in my head, and nothing is blocking that. Some of the best memories are yet to come as you get further along in your journey.
That is a perfect segue into the question that I ask every guest, which is, what are some of your favorite memories of your brother?
My favorite memories, one of them, this is so him. I was going to take a little portable television to school. My parents said I could take it. And so I went to get it because I was leaving for the semester. I wasn't coming home for the year because I was just in school across the country. He had gone to the high school for the day. I went up to his room to get my television set that my parents said I could take, and he had handcuffed it to his desk because he didn't want me to take it. And so I did. So it was going nowhere. And it was so him. I was mad and I laughed at the same time because it was so him. Another memory I have is when I was in high school, and he was only 3 years younger than me, and I would go and watch him in football. He was the quarterback of his football team. I'd go watch their team play. And one day he said, Heidi, can you stop wearing shorts and a half top to watch me play sport? You're distracting the team. But he was funny. Also, when I used to go on dates, I could hear him. He had blinds that turned. I could hear him turning the blinds, opening the window and looking out to spy on me with my date. He was always spying on me. I was like, okay, Scott, I know you're up there in your room spying on us. We'd be at the front door. So there's just a lot of memories like that.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to say before we end?
I guess just to remind people that there is hope, even though sometimes it might not feel like it, it might not look like it. There is post-traumatic growth after loss. And if there wasn't hope, there's no way I could do what I was doing. People say to me, what you do is so depressing. I say, it's not depressing. It's the opposite. Meeting people at the darkest moments of their life and the most difficult, and partnering with them and walking with them and companioning with them into the light and into hope is really rewarding. And I would just want to say to people, it takes a lot of time. Everybody's on their own time frame. Don't let people shit on you and tell you you should be doing this, you should be here, you should be there. I think oftentimes as a society, we want to fast track grief and we want to push people quickly because oftentimes people can't handle it. They don't want They don't want to feel our grief or see our grief. They want us to be fast track it. It's a journey. It takes a while.
Yeah.
And there is hope, like I said.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. And where can people find you?
They can find me at opentohope.com.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Angela, thank you so much. And thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for building awareness for such an important topic. And thank you for turning your pain into purpose.
You're welcome. And you as well.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening. Our theme song was written by Joe Millwood and Brian Dean and performed by Joe Millwood. The Broken Pack is more than a podcast. Visit thebrokenpack.com to sign up for Wild Grief, our newsletter, and to explore everything else we're building. If today's episode resonated, you can send us fan mail or support the show using the links in the show notes. Information on Wild Grief, our social media, resources, and our guests can be found wherever you get your podcasts. Please like, follow, subscribe, and share. Thanks again.
Oh, you never know, you just never know.